useful. And my father came to this country as an immigrant in 1951. He's got the typical Indian immigrant mentality, which is shut up, keep your mouth shut, work hard, make money, save money, have a good marriage, take care of your kids. My God, I've been in this business 15 years. I know nothing. I really and truly know nothing. And it was just this whole world opened up to me. And it was incredible. And sometimes they're doing it to test you, which is what I said I do. I do to test people and see how they react. I don't care about the discount. I really don't. I want to know how you're going to react when I challenge you. Because if you react badly, that's a red flag. But I always say, unfortunately, you don't really know what somebody is like, unfortunately, until you pay them money. And then you really discover someone's true character.
On this week's episode of The Engaging Marketeer, I am kind of under a bit of pressure. I am interviewing Niraj Kapur, who gets offered to be on podcasts all of the time and rejects most of them and says he doesn't want to be asked the same old boring questions about sales and about LinkedIn and about how you sell on LinkedIn. Luckily, I don't have any questions, so let's see how this one goes. Do you think it's different being an Indian in sales to what it is being a white guy in sales? And do you ever lean into stereotypes for it in sales?
The second part is more challenging because that's more relating to humor. And humor can be very hit and miss unless you really know the person you're speaking to.
Yeah, I took a risk there asking that question.
In London, I never really felt that Indian, which is why I loved working in London. It was quite rare I was made to feel uncomfortable because of the colour of my skin. People just get on with it. But when you're working in Northern Ireland, it's completely different. I mean, almost every single event, without exception, it's all white people. And for them, diversity means let's hire a white woman. To them, that is diversity. Yeah. And to me, that's not diversity. There's so many people from different backgrounds. But by the way, just to clarify, I don't think you should ever hire someone of color just to tick a box. I don't like that. I think it's a bad way of doing business. I think you should hire a person of color if they have a different perspective, a different attitude, a new insight, something valuable they can contribute. And in Northern Ireland, I've spent 30 years of my life working in London. I've spent 5 years traveling the world. I've written 3 books. I've done a TED Talk. I'm the only LinkedIn top voice in Northern Ireland. I'm the only person who gets invited to LinkedIn's headquarters. And yet hardly anybody will talk to me. I find that shocking, genuinely shocking, that the all work I get tends to be Dublin, London, Europe, North America. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people reject me here because I insist on charging money for my services. Because I don't discount for my services and I am the higher end of the market. So that I totally understand, because you have to be realistic about business. It's not as simple as just yes or no. There's always bits of grey in between. So I do respect the fact a lot of people won't hire me because they might think, oh, he could be too expensive. Or they know I have a reputation of someone who charges at the higher end of the market. I do get that. At the same time, I get very frustrated when our local Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce, it's just all white. And they could not care less about cultural diversity. And it really upset me recently when we had all these riots taking place in Northern Ireland and they stood together saying racism has no place. Those usual cliched nonsense corporate companies do to try to appear good.
Yeah.
It's like whenever American companies go Black Lives Matter and they do nothing at all, but they don't really care about Black lives. They just say it to sound impressive. And the Northern Ireland Chamber, and a lot of people did this recently, talking about we must stand for one. I'm like, you do not care less. You have no interest. None whatsoever. And that frustrates me a lot in business in Northern Ireland especially. People tend to do business with people they know here rather than people who are really good at their jobs. And I find that I just have to be twice as good as everybody else just to get the slightest bit of recognition. And at the beginning I was very frustrated by that. But now I'm kind of looking at this as a challenge and trying to excite myself, saying, you know what, let's just show them how good I am. So now I'm really pushing myself and I'm really upskilling big just to try to get attention. It's almost like trying to get attention from a father you want to please. It's silly in many ways, but at the same time, this is my home. I want to get recognition here. I really do. It's important to me.
Yeah. Does it upset you that you don't get that recognition?
It does upset me, but not as much as it used to. I, 6 months ago, turned out to have autism. I suspected it for a while. The 2 ADHD tests ADHD tests come out flying. But one thing about autism is we get triggered by certain things. And one of those is unfairness and lack of closure. We need to have answers why.
Yeah.
And when people reject you and don't tell you why, of course, in any way of life, it's frustrating. But in Northern Ireland, they don't often give you a reason. They don't even talk to you. But what I find is frustrating, with 30 years experience, 3 books, a TED Talk, a LinkedIn Top Voice, they'll hire somebody with a few years experience, no books written, no international speaking experience, but they happen to be friends with the person's husband. No, that's how the decisions are made sometimes. And it's unfairness, and of course unfairness triggers autism. So it's about working with my therapist, which I did a lot this year, to make sure I don't get triggered by things like this. Because when you get triggered and angry, it's very dangerous in business. Because all it takes is your attitude to come out wrong once, and in a small community, it can have very negative impact.
Yeah, my son was diagnosed with autism years ago, although he's convinced he hasn't got autism. He's explained to me in great detail about what he thinks he has. And I don't doubt him for a second, because he's put so much research into it. But here's what you just said then was very much about what's fair and not fair. And he would react, when he was younger, quite violently to something he didn't see as fair. And he once stabbed a bus driver with a pen because the bus driver went past one of the kids in school who was waiting at the stop. And he saw that as wrong. This is the reaction to it. He's mellowed a lot since then, and he's got a lot. He controls his anger and his emotions, but it's still there under the surface. But he has struggled to get any kind of work and functioning with other people at the moment. He does everything online, and he's kind of withdrawn from people. As you were growing up, did you have any issues with being able to interact with others and basically work off social cues and have any communication problems?
Nobody knew what the problem was. I knew there was something wrong, but nobody knew what autism or ADHD was back then. So a good example of this, I'd be in my class, and I'd be, what am I learning this stuff for? Irish history, potato famine. What good is this going to do me? You have to understand reasons why. And I go home to my father, I would say, look, Dad, I understand. I'm learning all this stuff in school. I don't get it. I'm not against hard work. I don't want to watch TV all day. But I want to do something useful. And my father came to this country as an immigrant in 1951. He's got the typical Indian immigrant mentality, which is shut up, keep your mouth shut, work hard, make money, save money, have a good marriage, take care of your kids. Now, some of that I agree with. But I don't agree with the fact that you should always do what you're told. And I look at the teachers in my school growing up, especially my high school, because primary school was quite a nice experience. I have to say, primary school was a joy. But in high school, you start to experience racism, for example, and you start to experience vile name calling. And when I would argue back, teachers would say to me, can you not just shut up? Why do you have to cause trouble for them? I'm like, but they're calling me names. Nobody quite understood at me. And so I always felt I was a rebellious child that nobody understood. And my parents always felt that I was difficult. I wasn't difficult. It was just stuff going on in my head I couldn't process. And every teacher I knew was miserable. They hated their jobs. Every teacher hated their jobs. And nothing seemed to make sense. And anytime I questioned anything, the headmaster or a teacher or my father would immediately tell me to shut up. And because they were such big, powerful, influential figures, it kind of affected my confidence. And so I would get withdrawn every now and again and just kind of withdraw from society and keep myself to myself, which as a teenager is very unhealthy. And so my goal when I was younger was to get out of Northern Ireland as quickly as possible. And the only thing that brought me tremendous joy, the only thing that really lit me up, was going to the movies and listening to cheesy 80s rock music. Cheesy 80s rock music had the edge for me, really. Bon Jovi, Bryan Adams, REO Speedwagon. It was just so much fun. And MTV was exploding at the time. And that was the only time I was ever happy. It was a world of escapism. So I made a decision I wasn't going to study on my exams. And I was going to get a job every Christmas and summer and save money up and use that to go into the studio, record 80s rock music, and become a rock star. Because when you're young, you mistakenly believe if I'm rich and I'm famous, all my problems will go away. Because you don't know any better.
I got to confess, I thought all my problems would go away when I became rich and famous as a film director. And
There you go. Well, I spent 20 years as a screenwriter and 3 years working in Hollywood. So I've
oh wow,
sold several screenplays, had them optioned. If you go onto imdb.com, you'll see my first movie came out in 2012. I've sold many children's scripts as well. I've had many screenplays optioned, a TV movie done. So the natural process was to go to Hollywood, and I spent 3 years out there. And 2012 to 2015. And after doing that, I lost all my love of movies. I lost a lot of my love of people because Hollywood, everything you imagine it will be, it's not. It's not glamorous. It's not beautiful. There's no rich people. There's no wealth. There's a lot of cynicism. And if you're a nobody, people treat you like a nobody. And it was a horrible culture shock. I think it's the only way to put it without completely changing the trajectory of this talk. It was a real reality and wake up call to get back into the real world again.
yeah. So what made you realize that you were actually really good at selling?
I didn't know I was good at selling until quite late in life. So at the beginning of my career, I was above average because I worked really hard and because I cared. That was pretty much the only two skills I had. Sadly, I never had a boss tell me you should read these books. I never had bosses send me on conferences. I never had bosses coach or mentor me, which was really disappointing. That really held me back in my career. But at the same time, I didn't have the self-awareness to think I needed a coach. I had to read books. No, I just wasn't that self-aware in my 20s. Your 20s is about survival in London. And then I had an arranged marriage when I was young. I knew a woman for 20 minutes and married her. I became a father very young, and it wasn't until I lost my job in the 2010 recession. And in 2011, my wife at the time really pushed me, saying, look, you've got to be a manager. That's the only way you're going to go further in the management chain. And I said, look, managers spend all their days in meetings. I cannot think of anything more boring and pointless, But in all fair play to her, she pushed me very hard. I got a job. In that job, I got a coach and I got a mentor. And they sent me on management courses and they sent me on sales courses. And I realized, my God, I've been in this business 15 years. I know nothing. I really and truly know nothing. And it was just this whole world opened up to me. And it was incredible. And all of a sudden I have staff for the first time, so I'm coaching my staff. And when you coach a staff who's a C player, maybe they're a bit nervous, lacking a bit in confidence, and all of a sudden within a month, they become a B player. It is one of the greatest feelings in the world. When you get staff who's a B player, you can take them to A minus or even an A. And you see them get better results, get bigger pipelines, close more deals, get more commissions. You're changing people's lives because with that money, they go out more, they buy more clothes, they get more holidays. In some cases, they buy second-hand cars. You're changing lives. And that's when I knew I loved sales, when I was able to coach people and make a difference to other people. It wasn't about me hitting my target and getting lots of money. That was nice, but it was helping other people succeed. That is one of the reasons I'm a full-time coach today, because when I work with business owners and I help them succeed, it is just the greatest feeling in the world.
I mean, it's a common myth that people think they're not in sales, that they're not good at it. But as you know, everybody works in sales. Is there a certain, is there a certain personality that's better at it? Can anybody be taught to be a good or even a great salesperson for their business?
Absolutely. People used to think you had to be an extrovert. And 40% of my clients are introverts. And I find introverts are very good at sales, especially at networking events, because people don't think they are because they're quiet. But you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be good at sales. Yes, every now and again you meet someone who's quite charming and charismatic, which makes a big difference, of course. But the people who are really good are exceptional listeners, which is an introvert quality. The people who are very good will give some thought before they reply to something, which is a real introvert quality. And I think having an introvert daughter who's a real intellect, her worst nightmare is having to speak at an event or go to an event, but she's hugely intellectual, and I see how well she does in her career. And so I've been able to look at her as an example of how introvert people behave. And of course, my own clients, 80% of my one-to-one coaching clients are women, which I've never planned. That's just the way it's been. And so many of these women suffer from imposter syndrome, confidence issues, because they've spent 30 years in corporate and all of a sudden they've been made redundant. And it's like, I'm 50 years old. What the hell do I do? Or they've got divorced after 15 or 20 years. And it's like, what do I do? Or their children have all left home. And it's like, what do I do? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? And they lose confidence for various reasons. And they come to me. And I'm truly honored they do that. And I'm even more honored that I can help them because I'm not a confidence coach. I don't have any certificates. I have literally nothing to prove I can coach. Nothing. But they come to me because they trust me. And they know I will not screw them over. And they know I will have their best interests at heart. And there's something quite powerful in that.
Why is it, I don't know if you know, why is it that most people who have imposter syndrome tend to be women?
Because as a woman, you have to sometimes watch how you behave in the workplace. I don't agree that you should, but a lot of women feel they have to. A good example would be, okay, just say a role of director comes up in a company. A man who isn't really that qualified will go for it. But a woman who's often overqualified will hold herself back. She won't put herself out there as much. If a man is giving a talk to his staff and he's not happy with him, and he sometimes uses language that's a bit colourful, that's the politest way of putting it in the podcast. It's quite colourful language. Nobody will say anything. When a woman uses language that's very colourful, she often gets called the B word, which is not right, but it often happens. And a lot of men, unfortunately, and I've been quite lucky in my career because most of my bosses have been women. I've been very lucky. And I was raised by women, mainly my mother, but also my grandmother. And I was married to a very strong woman for 21 years. I got a strong daughter who's an introvert. So I've been very lucky. My new relationship now, and my partner's got two very strong-minded stepkids. So I've always been surrounded by strong women. So my ego does not get affected whatsoever. So I'm one of the lucky ones. I acknowledge that, by the way. I do acknowledge that. But I see a lot of other men who have such fragile egos. And if a woman says something they disagree with, they get really upset about it and act like children sometimes. And men really don't behave appropriately when they're criticized, especially by a woman. They really do take offense by it. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that is how I observe things.
So do you think, like I said, with the phrase imposter syndrome, do you think that's a fair phrase for it? That, because it occurs to me, it's not really imposter syndrome. It's just more a better understanding of who they are and what they should do. And it's more like men have the opposite in many ways. It's more like fake confidence syndrome rather than women having imposter syndrome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But imposter syndrome is the phrase that women use. And so the opening headline of my LinkedIn profile isn't, I'm a LinkedIn trainer. It used to be, the opening sentence of my LinkedIn profile is, I help you overcome imposter syndrome, ghosting, overcoming sales objections, because that is what most people go through. So instead of having a title, which most people have, I choose to be different and start with the emotion, because emotion is the reason why people do things.
Yeah. And I think that's often a mistake people make with sales. They will talk about what service they have or what product they are selling rather than what the benefit is to you from having it, which is the most important thing, because nobody gives a shit what your product does. Yeah. Or how many years experience you've got or what features it is. It's what's the difference going to be for them. And
absolutely,
we write a lot of content for websites, and that's something that we have to focus on, because I see a lot of businesses, I see a lot of IT companies, for example, will talk about all the years experience, the qualifications, the accreditations they got, the clients they work with. No one gives a toss. Yeah. What's it going to do for me? So what do you think is, other than not listening, what is the biggest mistake people make when they try to sell to a client?
They never think, how is this going to benefit the customer? And they certainly never think, how am I going to serve this customer? So up until 2 years ago, I was struggling in business. My first 2 years, I hadn't a clue what I was doing. Then divorce and lockdown just traumatized me to pieces. And in 2021, I turned things around with a bit of luck. I had several posts go viral on LinkedIn. I became a top voice of the year. I'm not going to deny for 1 second there wasn't luck involved. Of course there was. But of course I kept persisting and working hard at the same time. And 2022, I made a decision. I'm going to stop selling, and instead I'm going to start serving people. So I'm not going to wake up and go, okay, what must I close today? I'm going to wake up and go, who can I help today? Who can I serve? Whose life can I make better? Who can I call and say happy birthday? Not a generic, lazy LinkedIn AI happy birthday. It's about making a difference with people. And if more people thought like that, they would enjoy selling so much more. People would enjoy being contacted so much more. And they certainly have a lot more happiness and fulfillment in their lives. I can guarantee you that.
You know, that's a really good point. I've done a course in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of it over in Ireland, called Ascentive.
No, I haven't heard of that.
No, it's an American thing. It's a franchise region. So it's basically it's a business growth plus sales course. And one of the features they talk about is what you've just said there. It's about reaching out to people and making regular contact with them, sending them thank you cards if they give you a referral, so that when you actually need something from someone, say you want to make an introduction to somebody you want to introduce them to, that's not the first time you've contacted them in the last 5 weeks or the last 6 weeks. Because if somebody rings you up only when they want something, then you're not going to be inclined to help them. But if they make regular contact and they, ask you how you are, wish you happy birthday, send you a little gift, say, how was the football result this weekend, then when you speak to them and you want something, it's going to be more natural. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a personal thing. You mentioned ghosting a moment ago, and you've got it in your profile. That's a huge problem in sales. What would you advise to? What would you advise to reduce the possibility of somebody ghosting you when you send them a sales proposal or a document or costing?
The biggest mistake people make, and the reason ghosting occurs so much, is people often rush through the sales process as much as possible and try and get a proposal out to somebody just so they can put it into their CRM system to keep the boss happy. Okay? Because people often have unrealistic KPIs in business. This whole make 40 calls a day nonsense still exists in 2024. It needs to stop. It's more important to make 5 or 6 really good quality calls a day than it is to make 40 dials. I mean, this 40 dials thing is nonsense. I only have 2 to 3 quality calls a day, but they are really high quality calls. And my conversion rate is 30%, sometimes as high as 50. That's because they're good. To me, that's more important than picking up the phone 40 times and calling people. Now, when I speak to somebody, we always have a follow-up time arranged in the diary that the client has verbally agreed to first before we send the invite. A lot of times the client will say, call me in a few months. People go, okay, I'll call you in a few months. And say in 3 months' time, there's been 0 contact with that client. And the problem that now occurs is you're starting from scratch. In the last 3 months, that person has probably forgotten who you are, probably forgotten what you offer, and you're starting again. So now and again, people will say to me, Niraj, can you call me back in 3 months? And I'll say, I'll be more than happy to. However, 3 months is a long time. What I'd like to recommend is once a week, I keep in touch with valuable content. It can be valuable content in your industry. It can be sales insights, or it can be LinkedIn insights. I promise not to spam you, just so at least I'm helping you, even though I'm not speaking to you. Approximately 70% will go, yes, in which case they are potential clients. 30% will say, no, you don't have to, in which case the chances of you doing business with that person are likely to never happen. And that's a very good way of gauging ghosting, because if someone's happy to get your content over a few months, there's a good chance they want to speak to you. And it means in 3 months' time, when I call that person, there's no surprises, there's no problems. They're not going, who are you? They know exactly who you are. You've warmed them up. You already moved a step forward in the conversation, a step forward along the sales process. And it just makes that experience so much better. And that's what majority of people do not do. Every now and again, somebody will contact me who has got a product or service that could be useful to me. And I always object either with price or say, call me back next week. And I deliberately do that, by the way, because I want to know how is this person going to react. And if I object with price and somebody immediately starts speaking faster, getting nervous, becoming awkward, there's no way I'm going to do business with that person. Or second of all, if I say, call me back next week, they don't call me back, and in 6 months they call me again just because it's on their system. It's like, no, it's too late. I asked you to call me back. And it's just amazing how unprepared most people are when it comes to sales. I don't want to use the word lazy. It's a horrible word. But the word unprepared is a very good word. And it's a very realistic word about sales. People just don't prepare for it.
Price is an interesting one. Because I hear that objection a lot from businesses about, oh, it's too expensive, or is there anything you can do? Can you reduce the cost? And I know bad salespeople in businesses will immediately go, yes, yes, we can reduce the cost for you. I've seen it recently where somebody came to us and wanted it reduced. He went somewhere else and they were charging him more expensive. And then when we gave him the quote, they knocked the cost down immediately to what he wanted. And he came back to us and said, they've matched it. Can you do cheaper? And it's like, well, that means they were going to rip you off first time round because they can reduce it like that. And if they've done that now, chances are they're going to do it again with something else. Do you want to trust them? So what's your advice on businesses that are challenged with the, oh, it's too expensive, or can I have a discount? Can you knock some money off? What do you recommend people say to that?
Well, psychology is very important in sales, and not enough people give it enough credit. So it's important to understand why a person is asking for a discount, first of all. Sometimes they are doing it to impress their bosses, so they can go back to their boss and going, hey, I saved you some money, makes them look really good. But a lot of the time they're doing it because that's only the budget they have. And sometimes they're doing it to test you, which is what I said I do. I do to test people and see how they react. I don't care about the discount. I really don't. I want to know how you're going to react when I challenge you. Because if you react badly, that's a red flag. So the first reason you have to understand why. So what I'll do is I'll say, just before I discuss this, because budget is important. Is there something I haven't explained clearly to you? So I put the onus on me. Have I not explained something clearly to you? And they'll often say no. I said, okay. And so just to be clear, these are still your challenges. Is there any challenge I might have missed? And they'll go, no. Okay. And here are the solutions I'm still providing to you. Are you happy with those solutions? That's exactly what you need. Is that correct? And they'll often go, yes. I said, but what have I missed here along the way? Not, I'm not going to offer you a discount, because that kind of closes the door. But what have I missed along the way here? So I try to do that deliberately because it buys me a bit of time. It gets them thinking, but also gets me to see, okay, how are they going to react? Are they just taking the piss? Are they doing this because they want to? Are they doing this because they have to? And you have to have a conversation. I've seen so many people, because every week I have to observe demos from people I work with. So many people will go, like you said, yes. Or they start panicking, going, we can't do that, but we offer the best customer service and we've won 5 awards, and they start rambling on about features nobody cares about.
Yeah.
So you have to slow the conversation down, take responsibility yourself, and then ask, was there something I missed? Or was there something that I didn't explain clearly enough? If I did, I apologize. Was there something I missed? And try to do that. And obviously that can go in several different directions. Just to make it clear, there's no straight answer here. It can go in several different directions now. But that is how you handle a conversation. You slow things down, you take responsibility, and then you ask a question.
I like that. And you're getting people to say yes along the way as well, which gets them into the habit of saying yes. One thing I've noticed, when people do have an objection on price, it's almost never about price, ever. It's usually they don't see the value. And if they're objecting on price, it's because they don't have a great enough desire for what you offer over what somebody else has. And how I've done it in the past, and correct me if you would do this differently, I don't know. When someone says, can I have some sort of discount? Can you do it cheaper? What I will usually do is say, well, we probably can do something with the price, but we're going to have to look at what we've got to take out. So if you're having a website and you're having a logo and you're having the content, maybe we could take the content out. If we took all of the content out, so you wrote the content yourself, we could possibly discount it this much. Would that work for you? And they don't want the content taken out because they don't want to write it themselves. Okay, I could take the logo out and maybe you could go and get a logo done somewhere else. Here's some people that I could recommend for that. They don't want to do that because that's going to be more expensive. And so as you explain to them that what comes out, if they have that discount, then suddenly they don't want the discount anymore because they want everything included. Is that something you would do? Or you would
Not
recommend?
as much recently. I have done a lot in the past, saying, okay, well, if that's all you have, I can take this away and this away. I tend to use that as a very last option because I really want to understand what the reason is they're doing it. And maybe it's something I missed. Because I know there's been times I've been recommended to clients, and the client really wanted to do business with me, and they told me that. And through my own silliness, I rushed the process because I was so excited to get to the end, thinking, this client likes me, they've been recommended to me, there's a good chance I'm going to win this. And sometimes you miss things if you're too presumptuous in a deal. And I've made that mistake myself. So you have to take the responsibility. And again, a lot of people in these discussions don't take responsibility. They're so desperate to get the deal and prove themselves right. You have to put your ego aside and be in a position to say, did I do something wrong? Or what could I have done better? Not enough people do that in the sales process. I have hired quite a few people to fix my YouTube channel, which is a mess. And the first person I hired told me how amazing he was, how good he was, how superb he was, how people loved him. I even got recommendations. I checked out the recommendations. They were great. He just couldn't do it. He just kept making mistakes. He kept making typos. I mean, this guy was convinced how good he was. And he just couldn't get it right. So people do stuff, and people will often say anything to get the deal. But I always say, unfortunately, you don't really know what somebody is like, unfortunately, until you pay them money. And then you really discover someone's true character. And sadly, I have lost a few friendships over this. Because you discover what someone is a bit unsavory or just not good with their word. And it's like, God, I wasted years talking to you. What have I done? That's why I hate doing business with friends. Because you're always scared of losing that. Because most people have a higher opinion of themselves, especially men, than they really should have.
There's something you said there. I thought that resonated with me, where there's something I haven't said in the sales process because I've rushed it, because I've been excited to work with this person. I think, oh, it's going to happen, and I've missed something. And then suddenly they don't go with you. But then you find out they've gone with someone else because of a reason that you do, but you just didn't convey it.
Yeah.
You just didn't explain it. Maybe they have a 3-day turnaround on any amends, and you have that. You just didn't convey it. And it's that conveying of all the benefits of what you do, the value of what you do, I find is the most important thing to get across. And it's sometimes difficult to get that value across. But what's more difficult is often when they do go with someone else to get the reasons.
Yes, not everybody tells
feedback.
me. I always say it's not what you say. It's how somebody perceives what you say. That's why your tone is so important. So when I was working with my coach last year, she said to me, Niraj, I understand you're trying to help this person, but you're coming across as a bit of a lecturer. And maybe that's why, because the client wouldn't tell me why they'd gone with somebody else. And the person they'd gone with wasn't cheaper. And I'm like, someone goes to somebody else who's cheaper, I get it. I don't agree with it, I get it. But they choose somebody who's a competitor that you know and respect, and you think, oh, okay. And so sometimes it can be something as simple as a tone or the way you've said something. That's why I always say self-awareness is such an important skill, and why everybody should always record Zoom calls with clients, and then once a week just listen back to a few of them, see how you come across, see your tone of voice, see, I got about, I'm very animated when I talk, and sometimes I'm not looking into camera. And I was looking at a podcast I did last year, and I only looked into the camera 20% of the time. The other 80%, I was talking like this, I was talking like this, I was talking like this. I was being very animated, but I wasn't looking into the stupid camera like, Niraj, come on, you know better. So that's why self-awareness is so important, because it helps you pick up on things that you shouldn't have missed sometimes,
And what do you advise, because this is the bit I do find difficult, I think a lot of people do. How do you find getting the reasons that people haven't selected you, that people haven't gone with you? What tips have you got for people to do that?
Well, I don't like to ask it by email, because sometimes tone and email, why didn't you choose me? That can come across as a bit passive aggressive. I never realized this until somebody told me a few years ago they thought I was being aggressive. I said, no, I just asked you why you chose somebody else. As far as I'm concerned, that's a perfectly normal thing to do. It's very logical.
Yeah. Why did you reject me?
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
But the word why can be taken the wrong way. So when somebody rejects me, what I'll do is I'll leave a LinkedIn voice note and say, unfortunately, I don't often hear about it until they sign the person up months later. They don't tell me why. So there's two answers to that. The first one is after a month, if I don't hear back from them, I will say something like, I understand how busy you are in your industry because XXX is happening right now. That shows I get their industry, and I've done some reading before this call. So if your goals have changed, or if training has taken a back burner, look, I totally get this. I've dealt with this so many times. It's okay. Please communicate and let me know. If you've chosen somebody else for whatever reason, I get that. It would really help provide you what I could have done better. Thank you so much. Now you do that in a voice note, or you shoot it on a video and just send them a video less than 1 minute long, which you upload privately to YouTube or Vimeo. I find I get a very high rate of response that way. But if I send an email asking why, they don't often tell me. So I think there's a lesson to learn there, because your tone and your sincere nature comes across much better on a voice note or on a video.
That's an interesting point. Something I've never tried, but it's something that, yeah, I think that's worth giving it a go. I like the sound of that. Do you
because of my autism, I need closure on everything.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
My autism gets on fire, so I have to have reasons why to do things. Otherwise, my brain is like, "Why am I doing this for?" You know.
Do you use video in that capacity for anything else earlier in the sales process as well?
No, I use video as a great source of my leads on LinkedIn. Majority of my leads come. I'm doing video now once a week for almost 4 years now, which is a long time. And my videos aren't pretty. It's me holding up a camera sideways and me talking into it. Every now and again, of course, it's me being interviewed in podcasts. Every now and again, it's me speaking on a stage. So it does vary, but every week, once a week, without exception, I do video, because video is very good for authority. Video is very good for credibility. But also, I look at what so much of my competition do, and I always ask myself, what can I do different? Because social media is not about being the best, it's about standing out. And the fact is, if you look at a world like, for example, LinkedIn coaching, there isn't that much which separates me, or my knowledge, I should say, from other LinkedIn coaches. Now, I'm often open enough when I speak at events to say, you know what, I can name you at least 20 LinkedIn coaches better than me right now who have way more knowledge than I will ever have in my life on LinkedIn. They're way smarter than me. They know more. So why are people hiring me for? Because I pick up the phone and I sell, and none of my competition can sell. Because I've written 3 books and most of my competition haven't written 1 book. I've done a TED Talk, my competition haven't done TED Talks. I speak internationally at events, my competition don't do that. I understand business and psychology and people, and my competition don't. And that's really important. In the last kind of 2 years, I've really separated myself from so many of my competitors. At the beginning, it was scary, because you're scared about, will they judge you? And then you realize nobody judges you as much as you're judging yourself, and your competition are busy with their own lives. And you might get a snide comment now and again, which is jealousy. But overall, they're not sitting there watching me. They're not waking up in the morning going, okay, what's Niraj doing today? They're just not doing that. But it's so important to do. And most of my competition still, to my shock and surprise, do not use video. And I use video every single week, without fail, 50 weeks a year, without fail. And that's a good lesson to learn there, because that is where my LinkedIn leads come from.
And with those videos, are you shooting them all once a week, or are you doing any in advance, say 2 1 week, so you can save one for the next week?
Sometimes I'll batch shoot them, and I'll do 2 a week, 3 at the most. But really, it takes so much energy and time to do a video. So unless you're doing it in a podcast or an event, which is a bit different, if I'm just doing it by myself, I got to think of what to say, I got to script it out, I got to plan it, I got to rehearse it, I got to shoot it. It takes a long time. People don't realize video takes time, which is why so many people don't do it. But again, you got to do the things others don't. That's how you succeed in business.
Do the things others won't to get the things that others can't.
Exactly. I have so much freedom in my life right now. You know, I've been this year, my partner's 50th birthday, went my first ever first class holiday, took a cruise ship, all singing, all dancing, no expenses paid. I would never spend this much on a holiday. But now I've done it, I'm like, I can't go back to normal holidays ever again. I just can't. And I'm working so hard now for my next cruise holiday because I want to have the 24/7 service. I want to have the room with a balcony view. I want to have 24/7 food. I want to have people cleaning my room twice a day. I want to have that experience. I love people who are listening in. I'm wearing a beautifully tailored shirt, a lovely jacket, a beautiful pocket square. I love to dress well. This year I've been to see Bruce Springsteen twice. I've been to see AC/DC. I've been to see Bryan Adams. I love my rock concerts. Those are not cheap, by the way. They are not cheap. They're £200 a ticket, plus £300 for flights and hotels, plus another 120, 150 for merchandise, plus another £100 on food. I spend a lot in my life, so I have had to, almost been forced to go big to live the life that I want. Just to be clear, I don't have a sports car or a private jet, or I don't make 7 figures a year. I'm being very realistic in business as I speak right now. But you can still go very big and still enjoy a great life without earning 7 figures a year. It's very important people know that, because people seem to have this nonsense. I see it all over Instagram, all over Facebook, especially Instagram. Here's how I turned everything around to earn 7 figures a year. Here's where I picked up 300,000 followers in a month. I mean, it's so much nonsense and exaggeration out there. I truly believe there's a place out there for people to give common sense, genuine, sincere, authentic advice and be the real deal.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because you've kind of circled back to a point I was going to make when you were talking about there's being LinkedIn coaches out there that are better than you. There's also a lot of LinkedIn coaches out there who are frauds, who are not as good as you.
So many frauds.
And because everybody's living their life on social media, posting their idyllic moments, many of which are bullshit, how do you or how would a business owner identify someone who is a LinkedIn coach, in inverted commas, who knows what they're doing, from someone who is literally just pretending to be the great social media influencer and trainer and doing everything and being able to get them to 7 figures, as you say, is basically just lying?
Well, anyone can brag on social media. It doesn't require much intelligence. The way you really know how good or bad somebody is very simple. You talk to them. Even if you get testimonials from people now, that helps to a certain extent, of course. But I find that by having within a 15-minute conversation with somebody, I know how good or bad they are. And the number of LinkedIn gurus out there who say, you know what, I did a post this morning, by lunchtime I had 5 inquiries already, 5 top leads, or I've been in business for 6 months and I'm making 6 figures. You wouldn't believe how many of those people reach out to me within a few months going, Niraj, I know how much I charge, but what do you charge for coaching? I'm like, if you're making 6 figures a year, you don't ask questions like that. You can tell a lot about people by the questions they ask. And Niraj, I've been asked to speak at this event. I know what I charge. What do you charge? Because that's how I know they haven't a clue what they're doing. Because again, if you're making 6 figures within 6 months, you don't ask questions like that. And so many of the questions they ask are so basic. They are questions that beginners ask. And one of the reasons I have really stepped away so much from posting about LinkedIn is because everybody else is doing it. And my coach said to me, look, we don't have a LinkedIn problem in the UK right now. We have a sales problem. So I want you to cut back on your LinkedIn post, stop talking about optimizing your profile, stop talking about content writing, and tell people how to sell. And that's why you invest in yourself, because Gail gave me that advice. And towards the end of 2023, I did that. And for a few months, it was very quiet and I was very nervous. But it worked out beautifully long term. Because sometimes you don't see the short-term benefits of your efforts and you start to go into massive panic mode. And it's only 4, 5, 6 months later you go, that was a brilliant idea. And that's why you should invest in a coach who really has your best interest at heart. And she said, stop talking about LinkedIn. We don't need any more people speaking about LinkedIn, but people need help with sales. Get out there and help them. And that was a big turnaround for me.
And that, of course, for people listening, is Gail Biddulph.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Gail Biddulph.
I'll drop the link to Gail Biddulph's website below this podcast as well, so people can check her out. She's your coach, and you speak very highly of her.
She's brilliant. I was recommended her to my friend Karina. It was actually Karina's coach. And, you always surround yourself with people, I believe, in life who are smarter than you or think it differently to you. And I love Karina. She's very smart. She's a Middle Eastern specialist. And I said, look, I'm really struggling to find a good coach here. A lot of the ones I'm speaking to are just asking me questions, but not giving me advice. Anybody can, asking good questions is very important, of course, But I want someone to give me the good advice too. And she recommended Gail, and Gail's been an absolute superstar. She's helped me so much in my business.
Brilliant. And of course, Karina's been on this podcast as well a couple of months ago.
I know. Karina's a rock star. I love Karina the biz. She's smart. She's just a really good boss, a really good person. And she really understands the importance of people and also how to take care of people too.
Awesome. What are the things that you can do, obviously, to increase your credibility and increase your brand on social media is, as you've mentioned it, a TEDx talk, which, as I've done as well. I'm surprised I didn't chip in and mention it because people would have expected me to do that when you said you did a TEDx. How did you find the process and the experience of doing a TEDx? And more importantly, how has it helped your credibility, and have you used it to promote yourself as well?
I approached it the way I did anything. I thought I could spend the next 5 months going through Google to learn this, or I could spend 5 hours and hire a TEDx expert, which is what I did. Why did I spend 5 months doing something if I can learn it in a few hours? So you always hire experts to help you, which I did. That made a big difference. And the second thing is I bought 2 of the most important books you could read, Talk Like TED and TED Talks. One's by Chris Anderson, one's by Carmine Gallo, both outstanding books which teach you about TED Talks. Then I watched repeatedly about, 50 times, Brene Brown's talk on vulnerability, Simon Sinek's talk, Start With Why, and a Guy Robinson talking about education, which is probably one of the best TED Talks of all time. Brilliant talk about the education system. And that's what I did. I really went to town on it. And even the week beforehand when we got there, and people were standing on the stage just to get the cameras set up. Nobody was asking questions. I was asking, where are the cameras going to go? Where do I stand? Where are the audience going to be? How's it going to look? Do I do? And I was asking questions. A lot of the other speakers there weren't. And I actually practiced my speech in the rehearsals. Nobody else did. I just wanted it more. I really wanted it. In terms of credibility, it's fascinating what happened afterwards. And I've had to learn a lot recently about detaching from the outcome. Because sometimes no matter how much effort you put into something, you have no idea what's going to happen afterwards. And if you have a certain outcome planned and you don't get that, you can get depressed very quickly. So because the feedback from my TED Talk was so amazing, people were queuing up to meet me. And I thought I'd give the best TED Talk that evening. And after a year, my TED Talk only has 2,500 views, which I think is disgraceful and actually quite embarrassing. And the other people in my group have got like 5,000. Some have even got 15,000, 20,000 views. I'm like, Jesus God.
Yeah.
And I got really depressed about that. Really upset about it. And ironically, it was, I think, about 8 months later, somebody saw it and hired me to speak at their event. I went, I'm okay now. Somebody saw it. They paid me £3,000. I'm speaking at their event. I'm okay now. But also, I've had to learn you've got to detach from the outcome. You've got to put heart and soul into things. You've got to give it everything you have. But you have no control if something goes big or not. You just don't. And you have to learn to make peace with that. Sadly, I only learned that recently. But it's one of the best lessons I've learned. And it means if I'm pitching for a deal, and I put heart and soul into it and I don't get it, of course I'm upset about it. And I try to understand why. And once I do, I allow myself about 5 or 10 minutes of self-pity, and then I move on. I detach myself from that outcome, because you can waste days, and I've seen people wasting days, sometimes even weeks, thinking, oh God, that's not fair. Why them, not me? And that's the worst thing you could possibly do.
To be honest, I think I had a similar experience to you. My TEDx talk, I thought I was the best one. I thought it went absolutely brilliantly. I am so proud of it. Everyone who's seen it absolutely loves it. It's had fantastic comments on it. I've had people contact me out of the blue after reading it. I've had Facebook messages and LinkedIn messages from complete strangers around the world. But it's not had the most views of the talks on the day. And it's probably... there was one particular talk there who's had, 5, 6 times the views I've had. And I'm devastated by that. But I can't control that. It's TEDx's YouTube channel. They're the ones that put the video on. They're the ones that decide where they promote it. It's out of my hands. It's just up to me to make the most of it afterwards, to get the most benefit from it, like yourself. But it has been really helpful to me as a brand, really helpful to me as a business. I talk about it all the bloody time. It's even on the back of my business cards, as you could probably imagine. We are just about running out of time now. Anyone listening to this that thinks, I want to find out a lot more about you, where are the best places? I'm presuming LinkedIn, obviously. Where are the best places for them to find you, follow you, and get in touch with you?
LinkedIn's great. Please send me a personalized invite. I have had 9 invites today. They've all been generic. They've all been rejected. I got 34,000 followers. I don't need more followers. What I want are better connections. A better quality. That's what I really care about. So if you don't want to connect with me, just follow me. But if you want to build a relationship, send me a personalized invite. Or you can go to nirajkapur.com and go to the contact section of my website and answer all the questions. If you want to get in touch with me, no problem at all.
Niraj, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast. I've loved it.
Darren, thank you so much.